say now, why are we taking this risk to anger the United States of America? And the answer is this: we are not angering the United States of America. They are angering themselves.
Island.
I think that one has to distinguish two clear things. Firstly, the city of Kingston, like many cities with problems of unemployment and poverty, has always had a tendency to violence of the kind that you would find certainly in many North American cities, set and off balance and that sort of thing. And definitely, therefore, there is a political element has crept into the situation.
Well, why would the opposition party, I presume you're referring to the opposition party, there are only two parties running.
Yes.
And why would they go to tactics of that nature? Don't you think it would harm them more than do them any good?
Well, I think that the whole thing, you see, has been, I think, rather cleverly managed, in that our political tradition has always involved, again, a very marginal element of violence, although it used to be in the old days just fist fights and the occasional brick and things of that sort. And recently what has happened, as I say, is to introduce into this tendency a certain element that I think is borrowed from the underworld. And I think this has been done by certain elements quite deliberately to cause a certain panic in the society, to give the impression that the government's not really in control. And of course, sometimes, as happens when the violence starts on one side, you get reaction from the other side. So in the end, you get a confused situation in which the average citizen may think, well, it just seems to be both of them at each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that one gets a cloak under which really to work the plan. And these smear tactics have been worked, which accounts for the Castro go home kind of slogan. And then, of course, there has been a certain tension in certain elements in the United States of America about our relations with Cuba, as indeed there is tension in America towards Canada's attitude towards Cuba, as you know, is not approved of by the State Department. And so somehow all this has got escalated into a series of charges and countercharges.
Well, is there some financial involvement, say, from the Cubans to your government and from the Americans to the opposition?
No. Well, I can't speak for the Americans with the opposition. There's no financial involvement between the Cubans and us, none whatsoever.
The Cubans are investing here, though. They're like building a school.
Well, that really was a gesture of solidarity. It's very much a, you know, there's a new thing emerging in the Third World, where Third World countries often do things for each other on a cooperative basis in a manner that I think is quite new in world experience and very interesting. We, for instance, are helping them with no charge at all with some things that we think we are quite good at, like tourism. We send teams for no charge to help them organize their new tourist industry. And also we have been one of the countries here who has, I think, shown courage in standing up for Cuba's right to be accepted as a normal part of the Latin American family. And I think that they appreciate this, and as a gesture of solidarity, offered to build this school as a sort of reciprocal gesture, which of course became a subject of propaganda.
Yes, why would they be so touchy, though, for people to take pictures of a project like that?
Well, you see, because they have been, the fact that they're building this school has been the subject of a lot of unfavorable comment in the American press. Right-wing elements in Jamaica have been very nasty about it. And they, after all, you know, have a very unfortunate experience with the CIA. The relationship with Cuba arises partly because Cuba is our closest neighbor, partly because Jamaica has always had a friendship that is traditional, really. With Cuba, it goes back into the 19th century. We find that we both share a deep commitment to the liberation process. We take a similar view of, we took a similar view of Nicaragua. We take a similar view of South Africa. We took a similar view of Ian Smith.
Do you take a similar view of America?
No, I don't think we take a similar view of America. I think they have, of course, a very unusual and painful experience.
do you think that your support of Dr. Castro and a certain number of his causes, that having Cubans here, has helped to antagonize the United States towards Jamaica?
Well, first of all, I've never supported Dr. Castro and his causes. I have discovered points where we have similar causes. We share causes. I don't support his causes, nor he mine for that matter. But that the relationship has contributed to and been the cause of strain with the United States, of that there's no question. It's a matter of principle.
Why did you do it? I mean,
because it is a matter of principle. Because to me it is an absolute matter of principle, and it isn't negotiable, and it will never be, no matter what price is paid. It is not negotiable for me to believe that a small country has to determine its policy by reference to what some powerful neighbor feels.
Comrades, all I can say, the international community has been run by the big powers for hundreds of years, and where are we? Where are we? They will go in the secret group that is trying to mash up the country. Will go in among the youth and find one that look like a leader. And they call him one side and they say, hey brother, we drop you $1,000 on the side if you get the boys tomorrow night to go down across the road and carry out a raid. But him don't know that it is a destabilization agent that has paid somebody to come among him and sell the idea of starting a bit of a street fight.
Rumours were rife of covert US operations on the island, aiming to make the country impossible to run and dangerous to visit.
It would be known that some famous syndicated columnist of the United States was going to come to spend a week resting in some villa. And mysteriously, the first night he's there, gunmen would arrive and start firing guns round and round his villa. Nobody would be hurt. By the next morning, he's in a state of terror. He flies home, and 79 newspapers across America read the story. There was a tendency to assume a greater level one of political comprehension that can distinguish between a democratic socialist in social democracy and a communist, and say that they're totally different things, though they may share certain objectives, about making poor people better off. They may share those objectives. I think that I overestimated the level of political awareness and consciousness, and therefore often if one, in hindsight, had maybe phrased things differently, it would not have fed into the whole reverberating confusion of the time. Mm-hmm. I wish I had it to do all over, because I think I'd do some things better. But I don't think I'd do anything differently.
What would you have done better? How would you have done it better?
Well, I tell you, if I knew what I now know about the limits to the capacity of the state to just take on things, you see, a problem. I'll give you an example. We were desperately worried about nutrition, particularly in primary schools. And obviously the private sector wasn't producing the food for that. So the idea was, let's find some acres and set up a government farm, which can be dedicated to nutrition for the schools. What one didn't realize is that in the end, even if the government farm was efficient, a lot of the product wouldn't end up in the schools. But there'd be, shall we say, an increase in the nutritional levels surrounding the farm.
In 1975, when Cuba sent in troops to help the Marxist MPLA in Angola, Manley made a speech lending Castro support.
And the freedom fighters of Africa and the forces of liberation in Africa, they know that even more important than the sum of money is the knowledge of the moral power of nations here in the Western Hemisphere standing behind them in their struggle on the continent of Africa.
It got Kissinger extraordinarily angry.
It did indeed. It did indeed. As we knew to our cost.
What What was the cost?
The cost, well, I think that they all played their part. You know, all of a sudden, all aid dried up in that year, and, you know, we began to feel all sorts of pressures of the kind we were just discussing. You know, the destabilization technique really was quite masterly in '76.
In the closing days of the Ford administration, Kissinger had become almost manic about obliterating Manley, getting rid of Manley.
A year later, Jamaica held a general election, the most violent in the country's history. Manley supporters shot it out with members of the JLP, the opposition party. There was murder and rioting on both sides. Manley won the election amidst claims and counterclaims that much of the violence was caused by an American plot to get rid of him, including help for his opponents by the CIA.
There is no question that there was a sustained and painfully effective destabilization process to which Jamaica was subject in the latter part of 1975 and increasingly in 1976.
Can you just give me some examples of that?
Yeah. For example, things like this would happen. It would be known that some famous syndicated columnist of the United States was going to come to spend a week resting in some villa. And mysteriously, the first night he's there, gunmen would arrive and start firing guns round and round his villa. Nobody would be hurt. By the next morning, he's in a state of terror. He flies home, and 79 newspapers across America read the story of the violent, terrible society disintegrating with gunmen the next morning. So you get the next few thousand tourist cancellations. That's the simplest example I can give. That happened. Another technique, for instance, is if you have a predisposition, as in Jamaica, to ghetto gang warfare, it's very easy to penetrate the gangs with agents provocateurs and stimulate them to really create mayhem.
Are you saying the CIA was operating here?
Our impression is that the CIA had a hand in what happened in 1976.
In what way?
That was our information. Well, in the way, for instance, that they would have done in Chile. Nobody denies it in Chile. It's always denied in Jamaica.
Mr. Manley told me that he thought there was a deliberate policy of destabilization from the United States to get rid of him.
Well, I hope that that makes better politics in Jamaica, that it makes sense with regard to the United States.
It's not true.
It's not true.
There's no doubt that elements of the United States system were involved in 1976. They deny it, and I hear their denial, and I have said often that I'm not satisfied with the denial because all our information is that they were involved in 1976. I must say that since the Carter administration, there is no evidence of any overt hostility towards Jamaica. There's no evidence of that. There is great hostility among certain elements of their system. You'll find elements in their Congress that are hostile about Jamaica as this friend of Cuba and non-aligned country and third world business, you know, and all this. All this happens. And certainly that has had a tremendous effect on investment. It has slowed down investment, and we paid high prices.
Say now, why are we taking this risk to anger the United States of America? And the answer is this: we are not angering the United States of America. They are angering themselves. They are not going to tell me what relationship I have with Fidel Castro. We have that friendship with Cuba as part of a world alliance of third world nations that are fighting for justice for poor people in the world. And I tell you as the party leader, as long as this party is in power, we intend to walk through the world on our feet and not on our knees.
We paid for it, we paid for it dearly in terms of aid. But Michael was very clear that, certain things you just have to take a stand on. Very firm on that.